One thing that may make a character compelling to someone is relatability. Being able to apply your current or past experiences to a particular character could potentially make you more invested in them. However, in saying that, relating myself to any given character isn't necessarily something I'm actively striving to achieve, nor am I looking out for it. I'm sure that I subconsciously apply my past experiences to a particular event that happens to a given character, leading to me being more invested in what's going on, but if I'm unable to relate myself to a character, it has little or no bearing on my opinion on that character. To me, character motivations and actions being understandable is a lot more important. As long as what's going on is understandable, then I'm fine. Leading on from that, I believe good characters are broken down into two essential parts. Part 1 is something I'll label as the journey. This does include motivations and backstories, but is more referring to how a character begins a story, how they finish it, and what happens along the way to reach that point. A particular character's motivations won't necessarily reflect how they end the story, but it definitely steers that character. But the journey allows you to watch a character iron out their flaws, grow as individuals, overcome their challenges, go through that sweet character arc and everything else along those lines. Part 2 is personality. A lot simpler and minor at a point, but still equally as important. This is pretty much as it sounds. It's the character's personality. This is preferably done in the way that is shown to the player rather than just told. This is through things like their animations, how they speak, and how they act. These two parts concern any type of character. Hero, villain, side character, you name it. And obviously combining these things you will have a pretty good character. But what happens when characters only have one of these parts? Can they still be entertaining? It's at this point I introduce the main topic of the video, another obscure game. I just refuse to talk about anything mainstream apparently. Transformers Fall of Cybertron is a little gem of the Xbox 360 days. I say little gem, I personally really like this game, but critically looking at it, it's definitely more of a 7 out of 10 type of game. Basically, this game is more of a nostalgic experience for me. There's a lot of things that I would have appreciated more 9 years ago. Let's put it that way. The main aspect I wish to focus on is the characters, not because they're perfect. Have you seen what franchise we're dealing with here? In fact, they only incorporate part 2 of my character cocktail. They don't so much as even dip their metal toes in part 1. Most characters in the game have their own distinct personality that's evident through their animations and the way they talk and interact with other characters. They aren't deep in the slightest. A lot of what I appreciate are surface level characteristics, but it's as if they were assigned a keyword and then they were built up around that keyword with such an attention to detail. A lot of what makes them up feels intentional, and on top of that they're very expressive, so they aren't subtle about their assigned personality. And all this in effectively a kids game? Wolfenstein Youngblood, for example, got none of this, or really anything good at all. To further illustrate my point, I'll focus on a model example, Megatron. I am not going to get used to these names. Starting at the basic level, Megatron is filling the role of evil warlord with legions backing him up. Looking at the character at this level makes him comparable to Bowser, which is interesting to think about. Megatron is also physically imposing, being a lot taller than the rest of the characters, highlighting how big a threat he is, which is a common way to communicate power, I know, but we're starting small here. During the levels you play as him, you're given the riot cannon, one of the best weapons in the game. Now I can't confirm that High Moon purposefully created an imbalance in the weapon lineup to make Megatron feel more powerful, but it's a nice touch. Whilst we're on the topic, the levels you play as him sees the enemies cry out and shock at his presence, which goes a long way to help build up how strong and threatening this character is to the heroes. These levels really do their best to stick to the established traits of this character. Now we move on to the voice acting, the loudest way for these characters to express themselves. This is what the voice actor got to work with, and they nailed it.
He's not worth the time. Starscream's penchant for self-worship has severely drained our energon supply.
It's so fitting for a threatening villain and doesn't overdo it. The lines are delivered in a grand, almost theatrical way that snatches your attention, similar to how his other aspects are designed to demand your attention. Towards the beginning of the game, a certain happens, and one of his subordinates takes leadership over the... I'm not saying it. Later on, Megatron gets revived and reclaims his position, and everyone who had previously served under him were pleased to see his return and the previous ruler dethroned, which shows that he not only has an army, but one that has some level of loyalty and respect for him, and as the hero you can rest assured they'll follow his every word, which gives additional weight to the threat of being faced by an evil army. It also adds a tiny bit of depth to this guy's character, showing that he's skilled enough as a leader or has previously accomplished feats great enough to earn him the respect of thousands, if not millions. Combining all that I have mentioned, you get a fairly surface level but still quite entertaining villain that reflects the ideas of strength, charisma, villainy, and being a genuine threat. This is just one example, but a lot of the other characters in this game follow this template, just reflecting other attributes. It felt at least there was care put into this title, which isn't something that this glorified toy brand really gets. It's also a good example of interesting characters that aren't deep but still entertaining. Also, if I may I, please, thank you, cheers. The rest of the game's narrative goes for an epic cinematic feel that may at times feel hollow but consistently reinforces stakes and creates a sense of urgency. So when something like a coup occurs amongst the villains, it creates some tension, as you're aware of the setbacks this will cause and the effect it has on the characters in the story. Also, the soundtrack perfectly accompanies the feel, and it might not be anything to shake a spoon at, but it's still very fitting. And that's all I really wanted to talk about with this game. It's a somewhat niche experience from back when I was just a boy. This game is quite close to me personally, and replaying it today after I experienced the masterpiece that is Doom Eternal, I was surprised to find something worth talking about.